Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israetel here for Renaissance Periodization, Muscle Gain Dieting Made Simple, video number 1, standardizing your intake. We're going to have, I think, 10 videos total here, very similar to our earlier series of fat loss dieting made simple, some eerie similarities here, but if you watch this whole video series, you will sort of at a very fundamental level understand the basics of setting up a muscle gain diet and executing it well so that all your hard training in the gym is really going to the right place by giving you enough nutrients to actually gain as much muscle as possible. Super simple stuff here, but even sometimes super simple stuff can be a little mysterious if you don't zoom in on it. So here's the deal. Lecture number 1 is standardizing your intake. You want a diet to gain muscle, duh, that's why you're watching this video. And of course, we'll welcome you in advance to Club Huge, where, you know what I'm saying, I'm trying to get, anyway, I think we all are. You're never really in that club, you just think you're on your way to it. And we're going to do things right because, look, I've done a ton of things wrong. I'm sure you've done a ton of things wrong. And in order to do things right, step number 1 is getting to know where we're at as far as our actual intake. Most people, when they start a diet, they want to plan. They want to tell me what to do. But before we tell you what to do, in order for that what to do part to be specific to your goals and to your conditions and to work the best, we have to make sure to figure out where you're coming from, right? Like what's hard, what's a lot of food for someone is not a lot of food for someone else. What's hard workout for someone is not hard for someone else. It depends on where you're coming from. So our first priority is going to be to figure out where you're at by tracking macros regularly. There are many ways to do this. MyFitnessPal is a great tool to do this. I would say the RP Diet Coach app that we have is cool, but it's really not a tracker. It can work as a tracker, not the best tracker of all time. It's a diet coach. So actually, towards the end of this video series, I'll tell you like when it's a good time to download and use that if you're into that sort of thing. But for now, free version of MyFitnessPal works great. If you're new to counting macros and you're real confused about the whole process and MyFitnessPal looks like, you know, matrix code to you, you can give some thought to our healthy eating made simple series, watch those videos, and then after you watch those videos, then tracking will make a whole lot more sense. Even just a few of those videos on basic macros and stuff would put you really far along the way. Now, once you start tracking, here's what you're doing. You're just eating basically to hunger, like you normally eat, however you normally eat, and you track everything. Okay, every meal you track proteins, carbs, and fats, or at least for every day total, so that at the end of this process, which is going to last a week or two of just tracking and pretty much doing nothing else. If you're more advanced, you can skip to some of the other stuff we'll talk about in later videos, but for at least a little while, you are going to track protein, carbs, and fats, and you're going to know after 1 or 2 weeks how much average per day protein, per day carbs, and per day fats you take in. That is super important because that's going to serve as the foundation of how we're going to construct your diet and then how we're going to change your diet to make sure you gain weight appropriately and gain as much muscle as possible. We have to know where you're coming from, and the best way to know where you're coming from is to measure where you're coming from, which is exactly what we're doing here. We could say, hey, like do this for a day, but look, it could be a weird day. You went to the Chinese buffet that day, or you studied really hard for an exam and you're like, I had a protein bar and coffee today. That sucks. Guess my mass intake is going to be 500 calories. I only had 200 today. That's not going to work. So a good week or two average will give you a stable baseline of like, oh, look, I eat like 150 grams of protein, 400 grams of carbs, and 100 grams of fat per day. That we can work with. And you're going to take that number, you're going to bring it over next week to video number 2, in which we'll talk about choosing the actual foods, because right now you're sort of eating whatever you want. In the next video, we'll talk about, okay, the foods that you're actually eating to make those protein, carbs, and fats. Let's talk about which foods probably help muscle building over the long term a little bit more than others and choose more of those. We'll see you then next week for that next video. Peace.